All right. I'm going to give it a couple minutes for people to get queued in and for our live stream to start in the group. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
It still told me I came in here as a panelist, so
We're live, so that's okay. I just mute yourself. Thank you. All right. We are live. Perfect. So today's live from the lessons webinar is going to be just 10 minutes of quick content sharing, and then we're going to open the floor for questions. But Branden Yamada is one of the Acquisition Lab advisors, and I thought it would be a good idea for him to jump on and talk a little bit about how you can decide if you should be buying an online business, because we get this question a lot. For anyone that doesn't know me, I'm Chelsea Wood. I'm the co-founder of Acquisition Lab, and I feel like a pinnacle part of your journey is kind of coming to the point of maybe I should buy an online business. And I think it's important for folks to really give that a lot of thought, right? And be very mindful. And Branden is an acquisition entrepreneur that specializes in online businesses. And so I thought it would be a wise topic, right? To come on and have him talk a little bit about how to decide if you should be buying an online business. Branden, I'm going to go ahead and point it over to you. We're going to do quick content and then I'll manage the questions. So if you have questions, we can't use chat. So please use the Q&A function and I will funnel questions to Branden. All right, I'm handing it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on, Chelsea. And hey to everyone who's watching the live stream and if for we do a replay in the future or whatnot. So I'm gonna just put it in the backdrop, just like the questions, so you can kind of see what kind of questions we'll be asking as we go along. So I'm just gonna share my screen and do that real quick. And let me know when it pops up. Sorry here. There we go. Share this. All right. Can everyone see that? I know it's like in my
Yeah,
browser form, but at least we can see the questions there. So these are
yes,
the questions
perfect.
that we'll kind of have there for everyone, and I'll just go through them or whatnot. So, Chelsea, is there any like particular question you want me to like cover first, or you just want to go in order? Or
I think for me, I think everyone kind of comes to the place where they're thinking flexibility or there's not a lot of variety available on the market. And they start thinking either they're going to have to branch out geographically in their search or maybe they should consider an online business. And
Mhm.
so I guess let's talk a little bit about what the thought process needs to be for someone to decide if they're the right buyer of an online business first.
hmm Well, my take is, there's a good online business for everyone that's worth considering. When you talk about online businesses, there's like so many different types of online businesses. You have e-commerce under that umbrella. You have SaaS. You have affiliate sites. You have so many different types of sites that are out there, and under those, just an infinite number of niches with a different level of skill sets required or whatnot. So I think, as we kind of move towards more digital, businesses going into the future, there's something I think for everyone. I think the main thing is to be able to understand the different types of online businesses and take better assessment of themselves and align those things along with their other criteria or whatnot. But I absolutely think that there is something for everyone out there if they take inventory of themselves and what's out there and actually get out there and look a little bit.
Can you talk a little bit about the different types of online businesses?
Yeah, there's a lot. So we touched on a couple. E-commerce being my favorite. I'm involved with a lot of different e-commerce businesses or whatnot. You have SaaS, which is super popular, which is a software as a service. So you see a lot of different, business like that. You can kind of like Google these real quick, and it'll give you a quick summary of like exactly what these are. You have affiliate businesses where people maybe do blogs or whatnot, and they'll talk about like let's say dog products and have their posts, and that'll link to maybe Amazon. They have like affiliate links like that. There's sites that do some good figures like that. There's so many different types of online businesses. You got B2B, B2C, business to consumer. They're endless, really. I could probably name off 100 and still not cover half of what's out there, but you have different skill levels that are with that. And I think that's one of the questions that we have there. Do you mind if I just jump straight into that question then?
Yeah,
As I,
please.
so like when we're talking about the different types, we're talking about like Shopify, SaaS, and whatnot. There are different businesses that obviously operate different ways. And with those come with different skill sets. So one of the questions we get a lot is like, is there such thing as like a beginner online business? Is there something that I can kind of get into, tap into passive profits or whatnot? So what I'd say to that is it's unique to everyone. Everyone has different skill sets or skill levels or things they're comfortable with or not comfortable with. So what might be hard for one person might be easy for someone else. So it's really important that you take inventory of yourself and your past experiences, your interests, and all that stuff. But there are kind of general, these might be a little easier to run than these businesses. And I think the key distinction with that is to keep in mind how many moving parts and factors there are in that business. Let me illustrate that real quick. So if you have like a blog website and you're talking about like dog products and you make your blog posts, you have affiliate links that go to Amazon or whatnot, you have less moving parts because you're just typing up the form, you're managing up the website, you're doing your blog posts, maybe managing email lists and stuff, and then Amazon kind of takes care of the rest. So you're just worrying really about the website versus like an e-commerce business. If you have like a Shopify business or you own your own website, and you're handling all of it, everything from how people find you with the marketing, the ads, the SEO, the website management, then people place an order. Maybe you handle fulfillment. So you kind of handle everything from A to Z versus, with an affiliate site, you're just kind of handing it off to Amazon. So there's different moving parts with different levels of skill required for each of those. And I think that's a big key distinction. But I think generally, some people will start out with these like affiliate blog sites, which might look easier. They still come with their risks, versus getting into something with a lot of moving parts, like we were talking about with, like Shopify businesses or maybe an Amazon FBA business or whatnot.
Would you recommend someone buying a company with no experience in the online space, no digital marketing, no understanding of any of that? And if so, what's the best strategy to do that?
I think you absolutely can. Like to this day, I've been in the industry for a good 7 years now, over 7 years. And I know how to jump into an ads account or jump into, meta ads and look at what's going on. But to this day, I don't make ad sets myself. That's something that the team, the business does, right? So you don't have to be a professional in those things. You can learn a lot of different things. I think the key thing that gets a lot of people, especially first time buyers, is they will jump into these complex businesses and they won't take inventory of what the business requires from them, like post acquisition. So if you're jumping into a business that has an owner that's doing all of the ads, like they're doing an e-commerce business and they're running Facebook ads and Google ads, and they're doing it successfully, and it's making the business a 250,000 or 400,000 in profit per year. That's a very high skill set, and obviously they're very good at it if they're making that much money at it. And so people will buy that business purely on figures, and then they get that into their hands. They don't know how to do it, or they have the false hope that they can hand it off to an agency and they'll do it just as good or better, which oftentimes doesn't work out. So I don't think you have to necessarily have experience in the businesses that you're buying, but you have to be able to wrap your head around it. And ideally, you should be buying well automated business where you don't have to have those things in your hand. It's done by the employees, or it's done by an outside agency that they've been using for years or whatnot. So you absolutely can, but there's a lot of prep work you need to do beforehand and be realistic with what you're getting into when you do identify those targets and get into your deals.
So many times lab members come in needing to replace a pretty significant salary, right? Because
Mhm.
the folks that we work with are either, mid-level executives wanting to make the money for themselves. Maybe they're retiring from executive positions. Um, they're founding companies and, selling and not wanting to do the startup thing again. And so a lot of times they're taking big debt, right? They're buying big businesses so they can maintain their standard of living. Would you suggest someone buying a larger business with debt if they don't necessarily have the background um, in online businesses?
Yeah, I think so there's a lot of factors to that, right? Do you buy a bigger business? Do you buy a smaller business? How do you offset your risk? Um, you really have to self-identify that when you're going through your personal assessment. Maybe it might make more sense for your risk tolerance to get into, a bigger deal or a smaller deal. the way I look at it is when you're doing business buying, you're not just investing your capital. It's not about 6 or 7 figures or 8 figures that you're getting into. It's the years that you're going to be putting into it. And one of the big mistakes that I made earlier in my business buying journey was I took on businesses that were small, and we had this grand vision of scaling those quickly and then flipping them. And there's 3 brands that we took on with that. And at the time, the profit was not really good enough as it was. We were trying to flip it so we could have capital to roll into a bigger deal. And that turned out to be a big mistake because one, the cash flow wasn't enough from the beginning, which couldn't really justify everyone's time. And then two, it took all of our focus and energy away from things that could have made us, ultimately more money and been more impactful. So, between those 2 things, it was a harsh loss for me because I lost a lot of time and a lot of focus, but it was a valuable lesson as well. There are people who will get into these smaller deals if they're trying to get started. Maybe they can't get the debt, they can't get finance through the bank, they don't have access to the SBA or something like that, and they'll jump into a smaller deal and scale that up, and then now you have proof of concept and maybe you can go into bigger deals. But my take, especially when I'm talking to clients or people in the lab, our members in the lab, is you need to have ideally something that is going to create a lifestyle for you that you want. When you jump into your first deal, if you're cash flowing 200 or 300,000 or whatever your goal is that enough to sustain your lifestyle and your goals and keep you happy? Because you're going to have to spend the next 2, 5, maybe 10 years on this business. So right out the gate, it needs to be something that should be able to support you and make you happy, versus like a smaller deal. You could end up wasting years of your life and still not be happy with what you did, even if you grow it super high. So, that's really tough. And then you do have to worry about the debt. But I think, that's why you have to be extra diligent in the knowledge and learning, understanding the process and knowing what you're getting into, which is one of the reasons we have the lab, is to help you navigate all that. And then, that way you can make smarter decisions about what you get into, because like I said, it's not just about the capital, it's also about the time. So both can fail, small or big.
Isn't
So
that the truth? Do you think that, or do you have advice? I know one of the biggest challenges for folks that buy online and it's fresh, new to them, is how to effectively manage vendors with skill sets and experiences that you don't understand, right? Like, how do you know if it's working, if it's not working? Can you share anything from your personal experience of how you navigated that, especially kind of in the beginning of your acquisition journey?
that's a really good question. And it's really overwhelming at first because when I first got into it, like there's so many things with e-commerce. You jump into an ad account for the first time and you're just like, what's going on? And you get into the specific like ad sets and you're looking at exactly how they set up the ad. It's just so much at first. It's like, how do you wrap your head around that? Even if it's managed by someone else, we as the owners of the business or the leaders or whatnot, we have to be able to understand how all that turns. And so that's kind of the base that I would recommend that you start with, is like, let's understand how all this is turning on like a broad level and then get into the more specifics or whatnot. So let's say, for example, e-commerce business, they are doing the majority of their profits through ads. They're doing it through Facebook ads or Google ads or whatnot. Okay. So we understand that that is driving most of the profits. Okay. So let's break those up: Facebook, Google ads. Let's jump into Facebook ads. What are we doing with Facebook ads? Are we doing photo ads? Are we doing video ads? Okay. So how are we putting these videos together? Who does that? Who's putting the copy together? So you kind of learn like level by level. And once you learn it, you know it. So like now when I jump into an ad account, I see all the different types of, ads that there are. I can, understand what's going on. It's really overwhelming at first, but you just have to start with the overview. So even when you're like in the buying process, like when you're looking at a prospect business to buy, you can ask a lot of questions just to wrap your head around all of it and be able to absorb, how it moves as a whole. You don't have to understand all the little specifics. That's for the stuff that you should rely on your team for, in my opinion. So as long as you have the grand concept of it, I think that's sufficient, because there's a lot of things that my brands do that I don't understand on the finite level, and that's perfectly okay. I just need to make sure that we're moving the right direction, profit wise and growth wise, and that everything is working as it's supposed to, and work on, how to scale the brand up from there. So that's my take on it. Is you just need the broad level understanding of it and be able to wrap your head around how it moves and lean on your employees and teams to be able to communicate the little stuff that you don't know how it works, like on a finite level.
Do you think that there's some foundational skills that someone can go and get if they're interested in buying an online business to get more comfortable with their own ability to own and operate one?
Um, I think I think there's a lot of different types of businesses that are out there, and each of those businesses require different skill sets and different things. So, as much as I would like to say you could go out and read this book and you'll know how to run businesses or whatnot, it's there's really not anything like that out there. There are some good books, don't get me wrong, but I think skill wise, some of the broader things are more applicable. So, like one quote that like sticks in my head is no matter what business you're in the business of people. So, if you buy an e-commerce business, you buy a SaaS business, you buy a blog, like your end user is a human in some facet or form. And then within your business, there's probably a human aspect. So broad skills such as like team management and leadership, those are really important. I don't have to talk to my team all the time and like one-on-one and on video chats, but you have to be able to communicate. And even if you're an introvert, you can still communicate in ways that you're comfortable with, or leverage a partner, or other people in the business to handle that kind of stuff. But you have to be able to communicate well. I think that's a really important skill. I think having a good work ethic is another really important thing. So I know these are like broad things, but these are the things that drive the mass movement of the brand. You have to have a good work ethic, because if you're not, as the leader and the owner, checking in with the business every day, putting in tons of effort and work and kind of leading the pack to success, then it all kind of falls apart. Really, if you have a bad leader, how's the team follow that, right? So you
Well, I
have to
think
be able.
one thing that so I hear work ethic, and some people will say, well, obviously, but what I hear from you is less about work ethic and more about how, at least in my opinion, there's a lot of glamorization happening, right? Where people are talking about buying businesses and being not involved. And you can be fairly hands off, sometimes with online businesses, because there are agencies out there that will run them for you. But there's so much risk in doing that when you're carrying debt. If you're buying a business, like a small business with cash or a big business with cash, right? You're not carrying the same level of risk. And so I always tell applicants at the lab, like your biggest, um, I guess our biggest role is not necessarily to tell you you should or shouldn't do something, right? It's to point out the risks and to help our members buy businesses in the least risky way possible, right? And so we talk a little bit about stacking risk, right? So I feel like what you're saying is, like, when we say work ethic, it's the whole idea of being what does everybody say? Absentee owner, right? I'm just going to buy this thing, it's going to print money, and everything's going to be, great, right? And I think that it's one of those things where the amount of energy and things that you put into a business
Mhm.
is what you're going to get back, right? I
Absolutely.
know everyone's kind of selling this concept that you can go buy a business and with no money down and go print money and lay on a beach.
Hmm.
But online business or brick and mortar business, you're going to get what you put in. And so I think
Yeah.
it's really important. And so when we talk about technical skills, and so let's talk about somebody that's looking at a content site,
Hmm.
right? And so what advice would you give somebody if, what are the top 3 skills that someone needs to have when they're looking at maybe a content site?
Yeah, I think for content sites and even for either online other online businesses, you one as a skill, like you should be able to understand the general business buying process, and you know, numbers that come along with it. So like if you understand how to buy businesses and assess businesses or whatnot, which is like, one of the things that a lot of our lab members understand how to do, that's really crucial, because you have to be able to wrap your head around the numbers of that business, even if it's content business, online business, whatever. I think, if you're looking at content websites, businesses and whatnot, you need to be able to understand how that model works, how it monetizes, how the different ways you can monetize it with different ad platforms that you could use for, like your blogs, if you're going to be doing affiliate links or something like that. So I don't want to really call it a skill, but like just being able to understand that how that platform works skill wise, a lot of this is just like you're managing it from your computer or whatnot. So if you know how to type up blogs or whatnot, like you can, but hopefully you don't have to do that. Hopefully there's a team in place or there's some writers, for the content based business or whatnot. So being comfortable with your computer and technology, because you're going to be doing a lot of that from for your business, I think is pretty important. So if you're the type that works on the flip phone all the time and you don't like, working on your computer, then that might not be the best, synergistic thing to look at to buy. So,
One of
I
the
know
things,
these are mhm.
no, one of the things that I think that you just said that's actually really important, and I just want to dive in a little bit, and then I'll start, asking some of the questions that folks are asking. But understanding how uh, an online business monetizes, and so when we talk about affiliates, so there's a lot of risks in content-based businesses around or concerns around AI and how AI is impacting the helpful content update on Google. What hit content businesses pretty hard. But it's also really important that you understand the terms of the affiliate agreements, right? And so all of the different platforms that people can use to build these content affiliate businesses, they all have different terms, right? And so understanding what the terms are so that you can understand the true risk of the deal, I think is really important. Let's go and talk a little bit about your background, right? Which is specializing in e-commerce. And so if somebody's buying an e-commerce business, that includes inventory a lot of times, unless you're buying drop shipping, right? And
Right.
so do you think it's important that somebody has experience managing inventory, for example, or understand the supply chain if they were to buy an e-commerce business?
Good question. Again, being able to wrap your head around how that process works. So you'd be surprised. You can spend 30 minutes on Google or watching videos and get the gist of how an e-commerce business works. Maybe you don't understand how inventory or the supply chain specifically works, but on a broad level, you'll be able to understand it or whatnot. There's e-commerce businesses that really don't manage inventory or supply anymore, right? There's a lot of e-commerce businesses that do a drop shipping model where they're essentially selling a product that they don't own. They're marking up for a higher price and collecting the profits in between. You have some people that are white labeling their product, putting their own brand name on a product that other people sell, like through a supplier, and that supplier's shipping it directly to the customer. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And I would say if you're buying like an e-commerce business and they have an inventory aspect to it or a supply aspect of it, and you haven't obviously worked with that before, you need to have some kind of guidance, in my opinion, to help you navigate that in the deal. So if you don't understand inventory and supply, you'll get a good bit, talking with the current owners, or if they have, someone who's handling the supply, maybe you could chat with them. But having someone along the way, whether it's a community or a professional to help you navigate that and understand it, would be super important. So I would say when it comes to like the supply chain, if you don't understand how that is, maybe having like a more broad advisor that's experienced with e-commerce tell you, hey, how does they're doing this with the supply chain, like, does this make sense to you, or is there other ways of doing this or optimizing this? You need to be able to have a professional to kind of point you, or educate you, like as you work with stuff like that. So navigating on your own for anything that you don't understand that you're trying to navigate in the deal, that presents some kind of risk. And the level of that risk depends on how important it is to the business or how crucial it is. So hire for the stuff that you don't know. And for the stuff that you do, maybe still hire anyways.
No, I think that's really helpful. I want to give some time to the folks that are asking questions here. And I know
Yeah.
there's some technical issues as well. So if you're kind of coming in this late, you can always watch the recording. Brandon and I will be there to answer questions in the Facebook group as well afterwards. Somebody was asking about, and I've seen this a lot lately, which is when online businesses are being positioned, or not online businesses, online like Facebook groups
Mhm.
are being positioned for sale. And so do you have any experience or opinion of purchasing a Facebook group?
I have, and I noticed it's gotten really popular on Facebook, especially people selling them, and you see people buying and selling similar things. If it won't be a Facebook group, it'll be like a YouTube channel, or it'll be something else. And some people would look at this at face value and be like, oh, I mean, it looks like a business if it's monetizing. We could look at it the same way. You can. Typically, whenever I've gotten assets like a Facebook group or social media channels or something like that, it's usually a part of an asset that is within a business, right? So if I'm buying like an e-commerce business that's based around dogs or something like that, and they just happen to have a Facebook group about dogs and they got 50,000 people in it, great. But if I'm looking at that in itself, there's a couple issues that you're gonna run into typically. Number one being these Facebook groups usually aren't super old. They haven't been around for 3, 4, 5, 7 years. They've been around a lot less, less than that. You got to look at, I talk about like the key factors that I look at when I'm business buying. You can apply it to, buying like Facebook groups or whatever as well. One of those factors is automation. So it's like, if they have these big Facebook groups, well, who's managing it? Is it a team? Is it someone else that they're paying? Is it the owner themselves, which is often the case. You usually have a lot of these people that are just great at Facebook or managing groups or whatnot. They're doing it. They got a bunch of people in. So like in that case, if you were to buy it and they leave, then where does that leave you? However they're monetizing it or whatnot. So I find a lot of that where things aren't really well automated, where it's something that you could necessarily hand off to a buyer and they'll profit off of it and it'll just keep growing the same way that it's been growing. So that's something else that you would really want to investigate more in. So I look at those as more of like just an asset that's included with like real businesses and real brands rather than just trying to, buy communities like that in itself. But you could maybe strategically tack those on if you have like a dog-based business already and there's a dog group and it's well automated, it's managed really well, then you could certainly look at that as a way to kind of bolster up what you have already going on. But I'm not too keen on them personally. I just don't view them as like businesses per se. Even if they have high figures, they're just not usually automated and have the other factors that I'm looking for when I'm looking for a target to buy.
Okay, perfect. The other question is around, I should say, one of the other questions, I'm going through them right now. Are online businesses only available through brokers and marketplaces like Flippa, or is there another way to source deals? I think they mean like proprietarily through like you do brick and mortar.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's funny because most of the people who are looking to buy online businesses, when you come in as like a first-time buyer or even like repeat buyers, most people are going to these listed sources. They're going to Flippa or the popular brokerages, Empire Flippers, FE International, yada yada. That's where everyone's going. So pay attention to how many people are going to those, like the mass percentage. I would say, it's got to be like 90-95% of people are going to those platforms. So when you have like thousands, tens of thousands of people going to these platforms, you have that much more competition, right? And there's definitely never will be enough supply to meet demand. So I'm a big fan of proprietary outreach, and actually all the deals that I've done personally have all been proprietary outreach, finding these brands that aren't for sale, which I find a lot of times successful businesses that are doing really well usually don't want to sell during those times. A lot of sellers aren't educated on the exit process and timing and all that stuff. So it's harder to find like these businesses that are in peak condition that are for sale. And when they are, you have high competition. So I spend a lot of time with off market outreach, which for our lab members, they have access to a course that I made. And they get that for free. I actually show them my exact process on how to find these brands, and they have my tools, templates, and all that. It's one of the free perks that we have in the acquisition lab. But yeah, absolutely, you can reach out, and I highly encourage you to do proprietary outreach, even if you're going to use it as a supplement to listed deals and marketplaces and stuff.
Perfect. Somebody asked, is there a specific type of business that you would recommend in the online space if somebody is really good at lead gen?
For lead gen, if you understand how to do lead gen well, there's a lot of different. I would say there's, you don't have to limit yourself to just one type of business. I guess with everyone, I recommend you take inventory of your skills, experiences, your interests, and all that, and past successes, and then aligning that with whatever target business. So even if you're not good at lead gen, do that anyways. But if you are good at it, I would take a close look at what specific type of lead gen you've done. So lead gen for like, maybe let's say if you're doing lead gen for like insurance leads for an insurance company, might be harder to apply directly to, maybe the typical online business you would find. Obviously, if you found some like insurance business to take over and you've done lead gen for them, there might be some synergy there. But if you understand how to like generate interest, develop lists, and then integrating that into, a pipeline or sales process, then that's things that you could do for a lot of different types of businesses. Especially I would say for B2B, you're good at, lead gen specifically, because usually with typical business to consumer e-commerce stores or whatnot, it's like mass marketing. It's like, how do you create ads to attract attention, get clicks to your website and convert them? But if you're good at lead gen specifically, that might be a little bit better for something that's like business to business base, where maybe you have higher ticket and working on bigger transactions or whatnot. So that would be something that I could explore, that I would encourage you to explore.
The next question is about valuation, and I think this applies for online as well as brick and mortar businesses, but most of the time, initial valuations, especially off-market deals, are really
Mm,
high. Brokered listings
mhm.
are still really high. And so how do you personally navigate between inflated purchase prices and trying to get them back to being a realistic expectations around the value of their business?
That's a good question. And there's a lot of this. So I was talking about how there's not enough supply to meet demand. And this is one of the things that come with it. You have a higher price, it's higher demand. So, anyone who has like SBA pre-approval, they could buy a $5 million business, and you have hundreds of these people duking it out. The multiple go up and the purchase prices go up, which is really tough. So, one, if you don't have to fight with a bunch of people, you kind of eliminate that. So if you have proprietary outreach, you're working one-on-one or whatnot, you might not find as many inflated. I mean, you're still going to find a lot of owners who think their business is worth a lot more than it is. But you'll have less instances of that from my experience. But even with like listed and brokered deals, I found that a lot of times they'll list high, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to sell for that price. So still work through, your process. I like to always start with what I think the business is worth. So you go back to your fundamentals. I like to go with my main five factors: profitability, traffic, documentation, uniqueness, and something else I can't think of right now. But I like to go back to my factors and come up with what I think the business is worth and start from there. And if I communicate that to the broker or owner and say, hey, I think we're in about this range, if that's in your ballpark, I'd be happy to, draft up a letter of intent or something like that for you. Um, and then if not, then that's fine. But start with where you're at. Don't let them dictate to you how much you should pay for the business. You're the buyer, and it's going to be your cash flow ultimately, and your risk and everything. So, put it out there. If it's something you're really interested in, communicate that. And if it's not within their ballpark, then that's fine. Move on. There's tons of other businesses that are out there to buy. But I like to start there. I like to start with me. And I think a lot of people forget that in their business buying process, especially first time buyers.
I think that that's really good advice. And I think that, at least in the lab members, I can only speak to them, is like we focus so heavily on branding and really presenting yourself as a serious buyer, so that you do stand out, right, in this crowded market. And I think that the other piece is it's all about economics, right? Like just because somebody wants a 6x for their deal, most of the time you can't afford it, right? The economics break. Strategic acquirers can afford it, right? PE firms maybe
Mhm.
can afford it, but not the financial buyer that we typically work with.
Yeah.
And so I would say be very careful not to get yourself in a situation where the deal doesn't actually meet your goals anymore, right? Because you're trying to please the seller. Like it's okay to walk away. I always talk about this with applicants on calls with the lab, and it's the worst case isn't, not buying a business,
Hmm.
right? The worst case is buying a business for too much money or not buying big enough or buying one that's not the right fit for you. Like the worst case scenario is not going back to corporate America, right? And doing whatever you were doing before. It's getting into a situation that doesn't meet what you're trying to achieve. And so, A, don't rush into something, and B, don't negotiate against yourself just to get a deal done.
Hmm.
Somebody was asking, can you just briefly give your opinion on which online business models are most impacted by AI, in your opinion?
There's a couple. Obviously, you think of like the different types of services that are getting popular with AI in general. So like what comes to mind is you have like content writing businesses that are popping up everywhere with AI, and that would obviously impact a lot of different content-based websites and businesses. So there's kind of it's a pretty chaotic scene right now, like with different blogs and different websites. Tons of them are using AI to write their articles and stuff, and Google's kind of like going back and forth with this war on how to like regulate that and mitigate that or whatnot for the benefit of the end user. But I've seen a lot of changes with that, which, to me looks very risky. It's not like when we buy a business for like a 3 or 4x multiple, we're assuming that it's going to, at least survive 3 or 4 years so we could pay back the money, right? If it doesn't tank or go on a decline or whatnot. So, that's really scary when you think about the outlook of, what AI could do in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years or whatnot. It makes you really nervous for stuff like that, where you're directly seeing like AI content businesses coming out or whatnot. So I think anything related to that is one. A lot of things with automation. So I know before there used to be businesses for sale that would do like video editing, like TikTok style, or video editing for various companies or whatnot. You're seeing AI do more stuff like that. Even things on the branding end, image generation. Those are all things that are like being ate up by AI. So I think starting with looking at what AI is doing more and more of, and then contrasting that with the types of businesses that are doing things that are similar would be a good way to kind of tell you what to maybe look out for. But AI is impacting everything. So for the ones it's not really directly impacting, you have to learn how to adapt to that and utilize it, integrate it, I think is important without it, being something that is just going to be completely taken over, by some AI service or whatnot. So
So
my take on it.
I know you specialize in e-commerce, but do you have an opinion on where people can find SaaS deals? Because they say that where they're looking, the deals just don't really feel mature enough.
Hmm.
And so is there a place that you would encourage people to look for SaaS listings?
Yeah, that's funny. I'll give a nice tidbit, which is in the course that everyone in the live gets for free or whatnot. But let's say you found a SaaS deal or website that you really liked, and maybe it wasn't big enough, or it's not old enough or whatnot. You can go to, a lot of these SEO tools. Like one of the ones I like to use is SEMrush, SEMRUSH.com. You can use it for free. You could plug in the URL of that particular SaaS that you like, and you can immediately see the different competitors for their, top keywords and the direct competitors in terms of their site or whatnot. So like, let's say if that particular SaaS website is like a calendar scheduling SaaS or something like that, you could see the immediate competitors, which are probably not listed for sale, and you could see who's bigger, who's smaller. So if they're bigger, you can go to their site, you can find their email, look them up on LinkedIn, shoot them a message on LinkedIn, and say, hey, I'm looking to buy a business. I'm pre-qualified for $5 million. Just wondering if you'd be open to selling the business for the right price. That's a great way to find something that is older, because with these free SEO tools, you can see roughly how old they are. If they're like, been around for 10 years, you can see that immediately. So I would say looking at the competition is one way to start digging into who's competing for those keywords. Um, and then in terms of like listed stuff, if you're not finding it on a specific, you have a lot of people that will look on like one platform. They'll only be looking at empire flippers, not finding what they want. Make sure you're looking at all the different, listing platforms and brokerages, making sure you have a wide funnel with all that. So there's different tools like the Kumo app, KUMO app, where it like aggregates all these listed deals into kind of one interface. That's a good way to kind of get more of that. But I think between both of those, you should see better luck with, maybe finding something that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I would encourage you to look at Centurica Market Watch.
Yeah.
They have a kind of an aggregation of online deals that's pretty reliable with larger deals. That some of the ones that you mentioned in the chat are relatively small deals. And then the main ones that you'll see with online listings is Quiet Light, FE International, Empire Flippers, Website Closers. And those are kind of the big names in the space. And so I would always make sure that you're following up with those brokerages. Um, and then somebody asked, have you seen success from reaching out to SMB CPAs, law firms to find off-market deals. That is one of the highest recommended ways to find brick and mortar deals for sure. And so I would imagine that it works the same way for online. You can find companies that specialize in online bookkeeping, online accounting, or, you know, accounting for online companies, as a way to find those sources. But yeah, I would assume that goes both ways. The last question I'm going to ask is, well, actually, I'll clarify because I just said small versus medium large. Somebody asked, what would you call small versus medium large deals? So small deals in the lab is kind of, I would call probably anything like that someone's going to pay cash for. So like under 500,000 probably in purchase price as small. And then I wouldn't call, I come from a corporate development side, so I wouldn't call anything medium large probably, because then that starts to get in the middle market. And so our members are in the Main Street space, and so they're probably doing what some people would call small, what some people would call large, which is that $1 to $10 million purchase price range. And so Micro Acquire, Flippa, those websites typically have pretty small businesses, like sub, gosh, 200,000 purchase price, like $5,000 purchase price. And so those are just like, I mean, acquire.com used to be called Micro Acquire, right? It was for very small deals. Okay, so the last question is, how do you think about roll up or external growth strategies with online businesses?
I think there's a lot of, I don't want to call it glamorization, but it sounds really cool, right? Like, I'm going to do a roll up. We're going to find 10 brands. We're going to make this grand exit. And I've watched a lot of people over the 7 years I've been doing this attempt roll ups. And I think I've heard of one that actually successfully did that. And he had a track record of doing it. So I would say if you're going to approach roll ups, I mean, you can just know what you're getting into and understand like the gravity of doing something like that. It takes a lot of effort, time, and know-how. I think there's a lot of online resources and kind of gurus that are glamorizing that and showing it's super easy. You'll make all this money, and it's tapping into this like get rich quick mentality. I don't think you necessarily have to do, roll-ups to make a lot of money. There's a lot of different strategies outside of roll-ups, but I mean, you absolutely can. I just don't see a lot of people succeeding trying to take on roll-ups, especially as like a first-time buyer, first, getting into the industry or whatnot. So there's a lot of different ways you could approach growth. So like one way, we look at strategic acquisitions all the time. So, right now I look for different pet brands that I can use as like maybe more of a strategic acquisition. And then obviously you can build up a portfolio of those. So you can have, maybe 2 or 3 brands. It doesn't have to be 10 or 8. And that can still be super sizable, making sure that they're well automated, and taking care of all the other aspects that make a valuable business. So you can go one at a time. You don't have to take on this grand project of trying to roll up 10 brands and then end up making nothing. Because I see a lot of people doing that. So if you got to start with one, that's going to be better than 0, right? So I would encourage you to do that, not be glamorized by the get rich quick. And I'm not trying to put down roll ups as a whole, but I think a lot of people have um, a wrong image of what they really are and what it entails.
I say that a lot. I find with online business buyers, and I am in a community for online business owners because I own the lab, right? And it was great for me to surround myself with other online business owners. But what I find is they manage a portfolio, Yusuf, instead of like a roll up. They just own a portfolio of online companies, whether that's content sites or online businesses. And so it's different, in Chelsea's opinion, than buying a brick and mortar and growing it through acquisition, right? And buying other locations in your market and getting a bigger footprint. It's more of here's a portfolio of, like, one of my contacts that I communicate with regularly in this community has, like, I think 15 online businesses that they manage. And like Branden has, I think 7 now, or is it more than that?
I'm involved with 11 brands now. I have equity in 11 brands and 4 of my own.
Yeah. And
Going
so
on 12.
yeah, it's typically you have more of just a portfolio of offerings. It's not the same growth through acquisition strategy or roll up strategy that you hear people use. And just for sake of time, I will say roll up traditionally means you're taking a bunch of things and trying to sell them to someone else as a bigger combined package, and you're not actually doing anything with them. You're just saying, here's 5 brands, buy them, and you get a cut of the packaging cost almost. And you're convincing the sellers to do that because they get more money by going into the market together. So that's actually a roll up, but not the way that everybody seems to use it in this space. I think what you were describing is more about growth through acquisition strategies. Okay, so I think that that concludes the time that we have. And so thank you so much, Branden. You did a wonderful job answering the majority of the questions in the chat. If we weren't able to answer your question, then we'll probably do it via email, because I think there's only one person that didn't get their question answered. Sorry. But thank you, Branden. If you're interested in learning more about Acquisition Lab, visit acquisitionlab.com. You can find Branden in the Facebook group. He's very active. And then you can find him on LinkedIn. If you would like to apply to the lab, it's acquisitionlab.com/application, or click the apply now button on our website. Thank you.